Warning: this content may not be suitable for the weak. Viewer discretion is advised. Needless to say, if that scene grossed you out or you thought it was way too much violence, you should probably just find another video to watch, because this is just a precursor for what's to come. This time around, I'm doing something different. I'm reviewing a game that just came out a few weeks ago, so by my reviewing standards, it's the newest game I've had the pleasure to play. It's The Last of Us, developed by Naughty Dog, the group behind Jak and Daxter games and the Uncharted series. Just from Uncharted alone, I never promised paying the full $60 in this game, and believe me, that does not happen often. Before I get into any specifics, let me just say that The Last of Us is a work of art. No other words can really describe it. I usually don't get emotional during a game, but this one changed that. Everything in the game made you feel like you were actually right next to the characters. Now, it's also a game that's dealing with a large subject: death. You see death everywhere. People are dying. You're escorting someone that's supposedly cured all the death, yet more dying happens around you at all times, with you dealing out quite a bit of it. It's a very dark theme that the game uses, but it does it so well that you can't help but feel depressed while playing it. Let me slow down and start with the story. Don't worry, I'm not going to spoil everything here, but instead just give you small plot lines from the beginning of the game. You play as Joel, a single father. The game starts off innocently enough, with him having a conversation with his daughter Sarah. After the opening cutscenes, you get control of Sarah, who's trying to look for her father. You do find him when he crashes through the kitchen door with blood splatter on him. There's another cutscene involving Tommy, Joel's little brother, and they decide to evacuate the city. The news reports in the background report of a strange case of people going completely apeshit and attacking other humans without even a thought. Of course, you don't get to exit the city successfully and are forced to run for your life. Near the city perimeter, Joel runs into a soldier, who then checks with a superior officer and then lifts his rifle. Joel and Sarah are both shot, but in a shocking turn of events, Sarah dies from the gunshot. This right here was depressing as hell. Sorry if I spoiled it, but it's only about 10 minutes in, and this game has a lot more surprises where that came from. After this, you get a simple white text on a black screen stating 20 years later. That's a hell of a lot of time to elapse in between this and what's to come. The future basically looks like something you might see in games like Fallout. The military has set up quarantine zones for the non-infected, who are forced to live on rations. Out of the city, you hear of a group called the Fireflies, who are actually trying to bring organized government back into the country. Kind of the opposite from most games, at least most games I've ever played. In any case, Joel sets out originally on a mission with a woman named Tess to talk to a guy who was supposed to set them up with weaponry, as their smugglers. Instead, the man sold the weapons to the Firefly outfit nearby, and Tess isn't too happy with it. One thing leads to another, and Joel and Tess are forced to escort a young teenager named Ellie to a Firefly camp in exchange for the weapons. Joel is visibly against the idea, but Tess calms him down and says it's for the best. Joel, being a stubborn, cruel-hearted person in this post-pandemic world, goes along with it, but doesn't hide his dislike for the mission. The whole reason why Ellie needs to be escorted? Well, Marlene, the head of the local Fireflies chapter, was wounded in combat and is unfit to do so. She does promise to meet up with the smuggling group at the end destination, but is physically unable to do it herself at the immediate moment. But as for Ellie, she's immune to the disease, so Marlene believes that she can be reverse engineered to create a vaccine for the virus. As for the virus itself, you never really learn how it all actually started. All you know is that plant-like spores are emitted from odd fungal growths in certain areas, and breathing in these spores will infect you. Likewise, being bitten by someone that's infected will do the same thing. It's a bit disappointing to never learn why or how the pandemic occurred, and that kind of stuff always bothered me. Like in Left 4 Dead, how the hell did the zombies come into existence? Why are you just running from zombies? And why are there the special infected? What makes them so different that they get a different strain of the mutation? Why are your characters supposedly immune? I don't get it, but it would have been nice to know. It just feels like a plot hole that just refuses to get plugged in almost any zombie game. Regardless, plot hole or not, the game still plays out fantastically. The story will keep you hooked in and wanting more, with multiple plot twists and oh shit moments. Eventually, Tess gets dropped from your group, so you're forced to travel with Joel and Ellie. You do meet up with two other running survivors named Henry and Sam, but they don't stay around for long. But the interesting thing to note is that it seems like every character you run into has the same survival of the fittest mentality. You'll meet a stranger who offers to trade Ellie guns and clothing for food. Of course, this evolves in another plot twist as well, but every character just has that I need to survive feel to them. In order to add to this feel, Joel's inventory is very limited on what he can carry. He carries a few available weapons and items on his clothing, but in order to access the inactive stuff, he has to kneel down and take out his backpack. This was a pretty cool feature, and maintains the realism that the game fight's hard to present. You can eventually upgrade to carry 2 long guns and 2 pistols at once for quick switching, but anything other than that, and you'll have to muddle through the easy-to-use inventory to swap stuff out. Things like first aid kits and nail bombs are always available in limited supply though. Also, ammunition is rare and you can't carry a ton of it, so you really need to make sure that if you want to get into a gunfight, that you make every shot count. As for the first aid packs, Molotovs, and nail bombs, you can craft extra ones by using the spare crap you'll find laying around in the world. For example, if you found enough duct tape and sharpened blades, you can create an extra shiv, which are handy for busting open doors or stealth killing a form of infected known as clickers. In order to craft items, once again Joel must pause and take out his backpack to sort through his scavenged items. As for upgrading your weapons, you need to find what looks to be little gears or screws or some sort of small things lying around. Picking them up gives you parts to upgrade your weaponry. Most weapons can at least be upgraded to fire faster or reload quicker, but some can feature things like a scope or armor-piercing rounds. Many of the upgrades are purely optional and not mandatory for completing the game, but they certainly help. The scope on the hunting rifle isn't too shabby when upgraded, and the reload speed upgrade on the scope pistol is almost a necessity if you plan on using it, since it only holds 1 bullet in the chamber. One of the coolest weapons in the game is the bow, and I was surprised to be using it often for stealth kills. Joel also has the ability to upgrade his own skills, but in my opinion, many of them weren't as useful as others. You have the choice to upgrade your maximum health, which is always nice. You can get more proficient with shivs, which is almost mandatory when fighting clickers. You can upgrade your healing rate, which just means you use a first aid kit faster. You also have the ability to increase your echolocation range. Let me talk about that quick. Echolocation is the ability to hear outside normal humans' capabilities and locate exactly where the offenders may be at. By holding R2, Joel will use this skill, and any noisy enemies will be shown as outlines on the screen. This can be very helpful when trying to sneak up on something. It's one of those skills in the game you'll either use or you won't. It really depends on your playstyle, but although I typically hate stealth segments in games, The Last of Us almost forces you to use stealth because you often just won't have enough ammo to take down all of your opponents. If you do have the ammo, you'll probably expend most of it or won't have the reflexes to dodge all the attacks. Needless to say, combat isn't easy. You'll need to do a bit of scouting ahead and timing your attacks to make sure you don't get tagged or flanked. The nice thing is that it isn't mandatory that you kill every enemy. You can easily run away from many battles, or even better, do it stealthily so that the enemy doesn't even know you were there. In order to move around quietly, you can press circle to crouch, which you'll be doing a lot. As for the other controls, holding L1 allows you to aim your weapon, and R1 will fire it. Pressing square initiates a melee attack with either your fists or any board, crowbar, or axe you may have found laying around. The directional pad navigates your inventory, and L2 allows you to run. Finally, to reload, you just press R1 without aiming with L1. So, it may sound like there's a lot of controls that you need to learn for the game, but there really are. This brings me to one sore spot I have with this game. But it's not just this one, it's many others. This is the game case. I open it up, and there's no instruction manual included. The only thing in here is the online passcode. I know most games show a tutorial during the gameplay, and The Last of Us is no exception. Anyway, when you pop the disc in, you'll see that the manual is available digitally. Oh. They should have put a little insert in the game case telling me that. I know, it's not a huge thing, but this kind of shit bugs me. What if I wanted to read the manual? What if I forget something in-game? I'd have to go look up a FAQ online. I would have been lost if there was no tutorial. Okay, not really. I would have figured this shit out. But is it hard to put a small, even 4-page thing in here that says, this is how you play the game? I already mentioned that Joel loots the environment for things like ammo and crafting materials. One of my other gripes about the game is that ammo is sparse as it is. So why is it that your enemy gunfighters end up dead and you can't always get the remaining ammo? You can't tell me that you kill each one of them right as they fire their last shot. Sure, some of them do drop ammo, but it's just not often enough. So now that I got most of the gameplay mechanics out of the way, let's talk about the main thing this game has going for it. It's incredibly addicting. There are very few games I could sit down and play in such a large amount of time and not get bored of it or want to take a break. Some of the more modern ones I can think of was every Uncharted game, Batman Arkham Asylum, and Metro 2033. This game gets added to that list now. The game as a whole just feels realistic. I've already mentioned that it already feels like you're right next to the travelers, but it's a combination of the environment, the characters, the sounds, and the camera that really comes together as a whole to not let you go. So let me talk about the world for a bit. The quarantine zone really isn't anything to really look at. It's your standard bunch of rundown buildings and random people shuffling around the street in shoddy clothes, while members of the military are poking them with carbine rifles. But the true look of the game comes when you get to venture outside that quarantine perimeter. You see just how run down the world looks. Cars are piled up where they would have stopped in the traffic jam, with moss growing all over them. In fact, moss is pretty much found everywhere, giving the land an overrun feel. The water is a bright shade of green from the vegetation growing in it. In the sewer segments, there's a severe lack of light, making you feel claustrophobic. If that's not enough, when in dim-lit areas you may find the infection spreading spores, so Joel needs to don a gas mask in these areas, making them feel even tighter. Add in a bunch of infected shambling around, and you just get the impression that you want to leave the area as soon as possible. When you finally hit daylight again, you sigh with relief and can almost smell the freshness. Okay, so I'm over-exaggerating, but what can you expect with a world this detailed? Also, unlike many other games that utilize the in-game engine for all the main story scenes, many of the scenes play out in an even better version of the engine. It might even be CGI, I don't even know. Either way is fine with me, but the game just boasts some of the best graphics I've ever seen. Everything is detailed flawlessly. Well, except for one tiny thing I've noticed. When the textures are loading, occasionally objects will flash white quickly. I'm sure it will be patched, which is a topic of discussion all in itself which I will not be bringing into this review. However, with this flashing, I have a habit of thinking it's an item I can pick up, so I meander over to it and find out it's just a frickin' rock. Well, that was a waste of 10 seconds I could have been using to beat a zombie's head in with. Oh well. One of the other things that really makes this game feel truly like a perfect movie is the characters. First and foremost, Ellie is a 14-year-old girl and acts as such. She goofs around a bit, like trying to learn how to whistle at times. She doesn't act overly mature and doesn't try to act like she's 24 instead of 14. Instead, she's trying to grow up in a world that's plagued by a disease, and at one point even runs away because she feels that she's just a pawn in a grand scheme and that Joel just doesn't give a shit about her. There's parts where she's practically begging Joel to carry a firearm to help out the team, and it isn't until about halfway in when he finally does so, although he's obviously hesitant about it. Even after this, she asks how she did and Joel pretty much blows her off. Naturally, she gets discouraged with all the negativity. It really makes Ellie come alive. As for Joel, he's an interesting character to play as. I've read a review stating that he has no personality, which I will tell you, in my honest opinion, is complete bullshit. He has a personality, but it is strongly guarded. It takes him quite some time to finally warm up to Ellie and be a father figure, and not just some killer hired escort from point A to point B. Often he came off as cruel and non-caring, but think of it this way. If you were in his shoes and forced to have a completely unrelated little girl tag along with you in dangerous territory on a mission that may change mankind's future but may also get you killed, would you feel any differently? Let's take it a bit further. If you witnessed your own young daughter get shot while you were holding her, and then watch her die from her wound while you get by with just a scrape, would you really want to put up with a girl who tends to look up to you as a parent? Granted, yeah, 20 years have passed by then, but the quarantine zone is guarded by the same military that did this heinous act. I can't deny that I probably still wouldn't hold a grudge against something that could have been easily prevented. With all the drama, darkness, death, and loneliness in the game, that's not to say there's no lighthearted moments. There's not a ton of comedy in the game, but there is some. The opening scene, Joel's daughter gives him a watch for his birthday, and when she's asked where she got the money, she states that she deals drugs. Later on, Joel closes the garage door behind a large group of infected, and you get this.
Okay, double time. They're coming!
I know!
Okay, that's good, go! something on your shoe.
The comedy is rare, but it helps bring a smile to your face. And this smile is needed because a lot of times, you may be really sad playing it. It's not a happy game. There's some frustrating parts to it though. First off, there's a few segments where you have no idea where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do. Often, a little triangle will appear telling you what you're supposed to interact with, but it's often so tiny that you might just miss it. Second, some of the combat is just so seemingly rigged to make you lose. One section you're forced to maneuver between about 6 or so clickers. For the record, clickers are a type of infected that can only use sound to locate their prey. They can't see you, so if you stand completely still in front of them, they still won't do anything. However, once they lock on your position, they will converge on you fast, and unless you upgrade your save ability, will kill you in one quick blow. By the way, the resulting death is pretty gruesome. Even Ellie isn't immune to this disturbing death scene, so if you're against watching a teenager die, do not play this game. Yes, it's unsettling, but sadly, it's pretty realistic. As much as I want to talk about the later sections of the game, I can't. I promised I wouldn't spoil it for you, so I'm going to end the review here. Needless to say, if you own a PS3, you must play this game. If you don't own a PS3, you should really find a way to play this, as it's easily one of the best games I've ever played. No game has ever moved me so strongly. It sucks you in and just saddens you with every scene that plays out. The ending has an interesting twist to it, although I was expecting something completely different. I thought there was going to be a little bit of deja vu in there. However, on saying that, I'm glad that what I thought would happen didn't. Otherwise, it would have been even more depressing. Anyway, as I said, just play this game. Also, don't expect to finish it in one setting, as I think I put in about 16 hours or so. Granted, that's with a few deaths involved, but overall, I feel that it was well worth the $60 I invested in it. Final score? 10 out of 10. Yeah, I bet you didn't see that coming, did you? This is Reaper. Happy fragging.
What else did you get?
Well, here. This make you all nostalgic?
You know, that is actually before my time. That is a winner, though. Oh, man.
Well, better than nothing. Oh, I'm sure your friend will be missing this tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Light on the reading, but it's got some interesting photos.
Now, Ellie, that ain't for kids.
Whoa! How the hell would he even walk around with that thing?
Get rid of that.
Well, hold your horses. I want to see what all the fuss is about. Oh, why are these all stuck together? I'm just fucking with you. Bye-bye, dude.